It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, November 13th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's doing a deep dive on Matvei Michkov.
Interesting.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. To keep up with our episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, here every day. So, Russ, we have been sort of talking around Matvei Michkov a little bit here. I do want to dig into a couple stats of his looking at usage and coaching here. We'll dig into his individual play on ice in the next segment, but I
Right.
think it's important to look at all of that first. He's played 14 games so far, which is too early to make any overarching assessments, but it is enough to look at how the team's been using him so far and look at
Right.
patterns here, right?
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's a snapshot, and that's why I did something called the Michkov report on sportsology.com, and I'm going to do it like almost like a quarterly report.
Right.
Every like chunk of games, I'll go back into it, I'll look at it, I'll compare it, see what's different, see what's trending, see how he's doing, all that. So yeah, and that's what kind of gave me the idea, like, let's keep an eye on this. Let's see how this all works out.
Sure. And we're going to put a link to that in the show notes if you would like to read that in more detail. Looking at his specific usage, right? So just kind of big picture. He's got just shy of 248 minutes total for the season, 182 of which is 5-on-5, 49-43 on the power play. So I think that looking at that, we've seen that they've used him on the power play more than not in
Yes.
some situations, but he still has gotten a lot of 5-on-5 time here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he has no 5-on-5, but it is controlled 5-on-5. That's really what we're talking about here. They don't really talk about it, but it is.
Yeah, like virtually no time on the penalty kill, which is to be expected
Right.
for him. But I think it is interesting to see that, let's just, round out 250 minutes total and to have 182 of that. That's a pretty solid chunk at 5-on-5, but that is a lot of power play time as
It
well. Like
is.
50 minutes of power play time in 14 games is a lot.
It's a lot. He gets to stay out there longer. They're going to use him every time. He's going to be out there with whatever unit every time. They're trying to, take advantage of that because there are no defensive consequences mostly on the power play.
Yeah, so that is the assumption at any rate.
Correct.
And his role is obviously very different on the power play, and
Yes.
he doesn't really have to have that two-way responsibility as much because that's not his job. But I think looking at his time on ice per game is a really interesting pattern that is developing so far. So, he started out the first few games, 18 to 1830, somewhere in there, which sounds about right for a
Hmm.
rookie, right? It's a
Oh, yeah.
for forward, it's a decent amount, but not too much that you feel like so much is on him. He was scoring, right? He
Yes.
came out like gangbusters. So the next game, 21-54, big jump up, right?
Right.
And that's directly related to the scoring, you think?
Yes. No question about it.
Right. Then we have the Vancouver game, 15-49. He got sat for sections of that game. if we recall, right?
Yes. Oh, he did. Yes.
So this is the first indication that we've seen where they're gonna start pulling him back a little bit because they feel like there's something that he's not doing right and there's defensive breakdowns or whatever it is.
Right.
They're pulling back a little bit, but it's just like for one game because the next game they go back up to 20 minutes because they figure,
Hmm.
we pulled him back. Maybe it's all fixed now. He'll
Right.
Against the first game against the Caps, he played 20 minutes. The second game against the Caps, he played 21 minutes essentially. And then against Minnesota, 17:45, a little bit lower than that, but he had a goal and an assist in that game as we were
Hmm.
in that time. So then they go back up to 21:33 in the next game. So we're back at like, oh, he's high scoring Matvei Michkov rookie of the month, right?
Right.
This is where things take a turn
Yeah.
pattern because for the remaining 5 games that he has played, so the last 5 games he has played, the lowest minutes was 13:56 against St. Louis, and the highest was 15:55 in the last game against the Sharks.
The highest.
Right. So now we've seen a consistent 5 game pattern of 13 to 15 minutes. So what do you make of all this?
So what I make of it is, this is the beginning of sheltered minutes. And I had come up with the assumption from my eye test that they kind of did this in reverse. They let him play a lot at the beginning, get really
Right.
comfortable, let him play his game. He did. He got on board. They were winning. Then they weren't winning. Then all of a sudden he wasn't doing all those things and they needed him to do those things. And then it starts going the other way. And we're still in that direction right now.
Yeah. And in terms of sheltering, that leads us into zone starts. So like
Right.
what were his zone starts and what can you kind of read into from that?
Well, because they were playing the Sharks, I thought it would be good to show him against Celebrini. So that's what I did. And it didn't include yesterday's game. So he was at 86% offensive zone starts. That's a lot. That's what sheltered means because, 7% was like defense and 7 was neutral zone. And so, yeah, the 7% on defense is like, they're like, that's as much defensive zone starts that we're comfortable with. That's not his saying. That's the team saying. That's their formula. That's
Right.
what they're doing. He doesn't control that. So, and I looked at Macklin Celebrini. Now, again, we all knew Celebrini came into this league as a better defensive player. Okay.
Correct.
So, but he's at 71% offensive zone starts. Now, he's not that much better. Like, he's
Right.
better,
Right.
but it's not like he's a Selke candidate or anything. So, this is where San Jose is saying, look, we know you can handle yourself in a two-way situation. We want you out there. We're going to let you be out there in those other situations more. Why? So you could learn because you have to make mistakes to learn
Right. That's the whole thing. It's like they have to give him more D zone starts or more neutral zone starts at the
at
very
the very
least
least.
to get him to learn. Because
Right.
otherwise, if you don't do it, how is he gonna learn?
You
That
can't
that I think.
simulate it in practice. There's no
Mhm.
way to.
And we're not saying go swing the pendulum in the other direction. We're
No.
just saying add 10% of
Right.
his add 10% to
Right.
his starts in the defensive zone or neutral zone and see how he does. And make sure you have like a Sean Couturier out there with him who's a strong defensive forward who can guide him and can cover. That
Right.
I just feel like that is the right approach here.
Yeah, I think so too. Like last game, yes, he got a nice stretch pass from Ryan Paling, but other than that, 5-on-5, I didn't feel like he was that much of a weapon other than that play. That play was fantastic. He's done that play a million times in his life. He knows it. Great. But other than that, I didn't feel like, other than on the power play, that he was that much of a threat. And so that's where having veterans on the line with him would be better. Paling's a veteran, but not really. He hasn't played that many games in his life, and Richard is not a veteran. They kind of went with, hey, there's a lot of speed there, and let's break him out with the speed. Now, what I call the charade of all that is he wasn't on that line for very long.
So, yeah, the 2 lines that he was on in the game against the Sharks in particular were new lines for him,
Mhm.
right? We're gonna get into his typical lines in the
Right.
next segment, but against the Sharks, he was with Paling and Richard, like you said, and then he was with Lawton and Farabee,
Right.
and that was when he got bumped up, right?
Right.
And so this is a whole different universe, which is,
Correct.
the bigger picture question. He has not had anything remotely resembling consistency here, and
No.
that's the fault of the coaching and on
Absolutely.
the team side of things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's good that they're giving him ice time and decent ice time. That's a plus. That other part is the minus. And he's performed great regardless. So that's why I think he could perform better if they just did that. Because I think we all have to come to the realization that, hey, whatever Flyers you like, you like. But even if you take Travis Konechny into consideration here, Michkov is the most talented guy on the ice. He's just not there yet where he could really do that and, put up 3 points a game, put up 1 point every couple of games, have a 4-point game. He's not there yet. But there's going to be a day where he could do that. And he is already his vision and the way he plays ahead of guys. So even playing with Scott Lawton, no offense to Scott Lawton, but at times I saw Michkov trying to give him a great pass and he couldn't really get into position for it because he's not
Right.
that guy.
Correct. I think he's better in those 2-on-1s with Konechny, but,
Yeah,
beyond that, he's not exactly great with, being in the perfect position with his stick coming down the
right,
middle.
right.
So, at any rate, I think that was a really interesting choice, those lines, because his
Yeah,
best lines are not that. We are gonna get into where he has had the most success or what lines have had the most success with him on it, and his individual play, from his side of it, coming up next. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle, save 50% off gourmet gifts site wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with the promo code NHL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NHL and that $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at OMAHA steaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code NHL. Minimum purchase may apply.
The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics. The world's top athletes get to play in these top level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammate when shopping for customized, affordable insurance. They could find you the right policy to get your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. You invest so much time to take care of yourself to be the healthiest, best version of you. Select Quote's exclusive policies can reward that effort. If you are in good health, they work with carriers that get you the same day coverage for up to $5 million, no medical exam required. And these policies are more affordable than you think. You could get more coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 a month. Head to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Select Quote. They shop, you save.
On tomorrow's show, we are going to preview Flyers versus Senators, and excited to get into that one. Always fun to see our old pal Claude Giroux.
Yep.
But
And Claude Giroux's dancing son. I don't know if you saw that
and
Instagram.
they've
He's so
got 3
cute.
kids now.
Oh,
So
so yeah, I don't know which one it was. Yeah.
yeah, they're all growing up so fast. All right, digging back into Matvei Michkov, looking more at his line mates here. So we saw, early on, there were two main options that they were working with here. The one that had the most minutes was the Couturier line with Michkov on the left and Travis Konechny on the right, just shy of 60 minutes overall so far this season. That line had the most goals for of any
Hmm.
line Michkov was on, but also 3 goals against. So
Right.
I don't know. They did have the most shot attempts per 60 there. The other kind of main line they were working with early on with him was the Tippett Frost Michkov option, 23.4 minutes. They kind of abandoned that a little early, I think, but they also had 3 goals against per 60. So, you know, there were definitely the defensive flaws to those
Yeah,
lines
and that's what they're
there.
looking at, that more than the offensive upside. That's just the way the coach looks at it.
Right. Right. Then the line that Michkov has been on with the third most minutes was the Forster Couturier Michkov line, 17.1 minutes overall. But as we've seen, Forster's kind of in the doghouse. So the thought of him being on a line with Michkov like is less and less likely right now,
Right.
right?
It's like, if he didn't do a couple of other things on the ice, I mean, he should be scratched. He's clearly struggling. He needs to work on
Right.
his footwork. Like, he's right now, he is not himself.
Correct. So I think we can kind of table that option
Yeah.
of a line for him. So I guess like looking at the lines that he's had the most minutes of that I just talked about, especially that Coots line with them playing on their opposite sides with him and TK versus what they did in the Sharks game, with the Lawton Farabee option or the Paling Richard option. Like these are completely different strategies here. So where do we go from here?
Why don't we put Mitchkop on his regular side, let TK play the other side, and Coots at center? Why can't TK play the other side? Like, that would be the way to do it, is to have the veteran do it. We were the ones questioning, why are you having a young player play his offside already? I know that's John's thing, is everybody seems to be out of position playing it, and sometimes it works out really well, like with Cam York, but they've never tried the other way. Why not?
Yeah. That's where I would go first. Absolutely. And just to get him comfortable. And it's
Yeah,
very clear that him being with Sean Couturier is for now is the best option. I
yeah,
think Frost is the goal, but the
right.
now is Sean Couturier for a
Yeah, I
center.
agree. Yeah, and I think it's important because right now Couturier has taken on the role of going to the net, and Mitchkov is
Yes.
always around the net looking for somebody.
Right. Yeah. Couturier's game has changed a little bit
Yes.
over
He's a
these
half court game
games.
now, like we see.
Yeah.
That's the way his game is now.
So looking at Mitchkov's stats overall in 14 games, 5 goals, 7 assists. He's a -6. Of those 5 goals, 3 were on the power play. So we've seen a couple 5-on-5s
Right.
recently that have been a good trend. He's at 20% shooting overall, 6.05 shots attempts per 60. So that's pretty, like, it's a little low, but
It's
not
a little low
too
because only
low.
3.2 of those are registered shots per
Correct. These
game.
are
That's a
shot
little low.
attempts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but interestingly, at 5-on-5, the shooting percentage goes down from 20% to 7.69. And that's normal for it to go down, but I think that's a lot, right?
It's a lot for him, and you could see it. Uh, we've been saying he has to shoot more. I'm sure they're saying to him, "Hey, just shoot more." But I also think that's a function of him being comfortable with his line mates. If he doesn't have an
Right.
idea of what those line mates are going to do, he's going to look to set them up because that's his superpower. That's his
Right.
first thing.
He's like playing 3D chess here. And so he's
Yeah,
trying to think about a shot and what rebound he can create.
right,
Now there's fewer rebounds in the NHL than there were in the KHL. So
right.
I think he's going to have to kind of train himself out of that to some degree.
Yeah,
But I think that, yeah, he's like looking for the shot that's going to give him and his line mates the best opportunities rather than just being selfish about it. I think, like, I wouldn't normally say this, but I think he needs to be a little more selfish about it.
he does. And something else that I've noticed, I don't know if it's something that's been told or it's just happenstance. He hasn't tried a Michigan in a while. He was trying them
Mhm.
regularly, and I didn't have a problem with it doing it because one might go in. I wonder if the coaching staff said, "Hey, don't do that."
I wonder, but maybe they'll if he keeps going and scoring at 5-on-5, they'll kind of let him a little bit more loose. And if
Maybe.
he's on the right line,
Yeah,
maybe
maybe.
him being with Coots and TK gives him more confidence to do that sort of thing.
Sure.
So I think there's something to that. He's taking more penalties than he's drawing right now, which I think is kind of normal for a young guy in the league trying to figure out where the
He's
line is.
It's his
But
temper, though. He
yes,
does have a temper. Okay.
that's what I was gonna say is the little asterisk to that is, like, he needs to not get baited. I think, if it's just a gameplay penalty, like a trip or a hold or something, like, that's one thing, but roughing and, getting into
Yeah.
it is a
What
whole other.
happened with Celebrini, like, one of his teammates could have stopped that before, he punched him in the face, and all of a sudden the Flyers are on the penalty kill to start an overtime. 90% of the time, you're gonna lose that game.
Yeah,
It worked
that's
out
true.
for him that time. So, but somebody on the ice has to sorta just push him away, and if they have to get into it with Celebrini, fine, but Celebrini would have backed off. He wasn't gonna punch back. So that was something, and he and Eklund were going at it, as we talked about on last show, a little bit. That's fine. But he does have to understand that, yes, you have to be out on the ice. When you're in the penalty box, you're not helping the situation because you're one of the team's better scorers. So you have to be out there. So that is something, like you said, he'll have to learn. But the other thing is the hits against, they're starting to rise. As his
Yep.
points rise, so is that.
Yeah, so he's got 4 hits thrown and 12 taken.
Yeah,
That's a huge differential,
it is.
and again, it's kinda natural for a young phenom to get targeted, so I
Hmm.
understand why he has a lot of hits against, but I think he's, for the most part, handling it well. It's just figuring out how to not put himself in positions where he's
I'm
gonna
not.
get
I'm
shellacked.
not even worried about how he's doing it. My answer is his teammates. Like, we were told Nick Delorier was going to handle this. Him just being out there or being on the team was going to deter that. Well, that's false. That hasn't happened. So, I know if somebody jumps him, a teammate's going to do something, but I feel like somebody does have to be on his line. I think Couturier would be that guy to kind of thwart things before they happen, whether he's setting a pick, whether he has to hit somebody preemptively, whatever. We don't see enough of that.
I think so. I think this will be an interesting season to watch, and we'll do another quarterly report on
Yep,
him,
we definitely will.
maybe around the holidays. But
Yep.
I think that to be continued. But we've already seen some interesting patterns here for sure. It's time for our mailbag. Y'all have some really good questions, so we're going to get to those coming up next.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5, get 150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I would go with the Indianapolis Colts over the New York Jets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Diving right into our mailbag here, Dean Hartscrabble 7726 asks a question over on YouTube. Says he listens on Apple though, but posted on YouTube, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
He asks, would it be a possibility that Michkov was benched to specifically watch Kucherov, and then they won that game, so Torch just kept the same lines? Just a thought.
I don't think that was the reason, because they could just hand him a video package of Kucherov and he could watch that
That's
anytime,
also true.
right? So, but playing against him is different. That's when players really learn about other players. You could see some things in video, whatever, but when things are happening in real time against you, and let's say Kucherov does something that burns you, it's going to have more impact if you're actually out on the ice. Yeah, I mean, sure. Did winning have something to do with him being benched a second time? Sure, but this is not a regular veteran player, and this isn't like something that's been set or preset. So I don't think it was the right answer, right idea.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, it was an interesting choice of a game to scratch him. Like we said, it's not a bad thing for him to get scratched every now and
Right,
again for this purpose, but
right.
choosing that game in particular, we thought was just a little unproductive.
Yeah.
But maybe the Florida game would have been better to start with that one,
Hmm.
per se. But I think, like, I just really think that there's a method to the madness, and they haven't quite figured out what that is in terms of the right approach there. Guido Valenti asked, related to our Phantoms Tuesday episode, or commented, not many Phantoms players will play in the NHL. Maybe Samu Tuomala, Helge Grans, and Hunter McDonald. And, it made me wonder, well, is that it on this roster here? And I think, we've talked about Ali Lixel here. He absolutely should be able to make it to the NHL. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of when and with who at this point. I would think that Ethan Sampson has some
Yeah, I think
potential.
Samson has some potential. And I think, I don't know how many games it would be, but I think at some point things will click for Rizzo. And you might see him. He has chemistry with Brink. And that's something that, in the future they can maybe look at if that starts to work out. Some of the other guys are a little bit more longer term, but I think, yeah, I think that's it for the moment, but it doesn't mean it won't
Right.
change. Uh, Now, some of the guys have had a chance already, and maybe they're not going to get back up. That's
Right.
possible.
Right. We shall see on that front. BlackRock's 8413 commented, every time the Flyers play is a weird one, but Richard played well with energy and Andre is doing really well. So that made me think, do either or both of them stick? We talked last night, um, after the Sharks game, that Andre isn't going anywhere. I
No.
think we both agree on that. But
Yeah,
what
I
do you think
tweeted.
about Richard?
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I would just say about Andre, I tweeted if people didn't see it, like he makes the Flyers better. So he's definitely not going anywhere. Richard might get another game or two. It's maybe unfair to say he's going to have to produce more. He's going to get sent down or he's going to get sent down. It's nice that he has speed. It's nice that he'll do a little forecheck. But at the end of the day, he is going to have to put up points.
Yeah, and I think he'll have to not make defensive mistakes
That too.
that cause harm. I think that's really what it is, and that there isn't really space for him. And if they
Right.
really decide that they're not going to scratch these other guys, then there isn't room for him. But I think it's okay. I think it's okay if he's a back and forth kind of
Yeah,
guy
I mean,
between
otherwise,
the Phantoms
BlackRock's, I'm
and
going
the
to be like,
Flyers.
hey, it's him or Brink. What do you want? It might
Yeah.
come to that.
Ian asks, does a win against the Sharks mean that Morgan Frost will be scratched again?
There's a good chance. Yeah. Yeah. I think, again, I'm going to just say it like this. I'm going to say it as a collective we, even though I'd like to take myself out of this equation. We're right back in the same spot it was last year with Morgan Frost and the coach. There's no
Yeah.
difference.
It's disappointing, I gotta
It's
say.
disappointing. And it's not like Frost had a bad season. He didn't. I just think, yeah, expectations are always a little more than maybe what he's given you so far, but it's not like this player stinks. There are other things he can do in the lineup for you. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that Torts has said specifically that this is a different kind of year for Morgan Frost, that the expectations are higher and the leash is shorter. And so this is an example of that, right? Where
Yeah.
there's something went wrong in one game and he's out. And that's just what it is, that he's not really being given an opportunity to redeem himself immediately after making some mistakes. And in some respects, I do understand where Torts is coming from on that, in terms of this is a year down the road, you're older, you should have erased all these mistakes by now. But also, Morgan Frost is a really good center that brings a lot to the table in terms of in-game things that this team needs, and is the like 2 or 3 mistakes that you're talking about, like, is taking him out of the game to eliminate those 2 or 3 errors worth what you're losing? And to me, the answer to that is no.
Right.
That
If
you
they
have
took
to
him,
look at the full scale here of what you're doing.
yeah. If they, as an example, took him out to fix the line change problem, well, they didn't fix it. They still
They
have
didn't
it.
fix it. It wasn't him. It was
It's not him.
clearly not just him there. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on it, but, we'll see if he gets back in against Ottawa. Mike emailed us with a bunch of draft questions and said specifically, you don't have to answer these questions now, but maybe closer to the draft when we have the full analysis. But I think the questions are good from a big picture perspective to ask in terms of just philosophically, how do you approach things? So Mike is asking how many first line centers there are on the draft, how many first pairing defensemen are there any who are number one defensemen? And says, I think this is critical given the number of first round picks the Flyers have and where their own picks could fall. I have a bad feeling they could be on the outside looking in. And to me, that affects your trade deadline strategy as far as if you're willing to part with anything in any trade deadline deal and what you're looking to do with those 6 first 2 round picks in terms of maybe getting that first line center or that top pairing defenseman.
Right. So, I mean, the only thing I'll mention is as far as the centers, we mentioned James Higgins and Roger McQueen as 2 to look out for. You know, they're top-notch guys. I don't know if McQueen is like a number 1 center. I think Higgins is, but I don't know. I'll know more in a few months. Definitely could tell you more about all those other things, but I could just say this as far as like a draft philosophy. So as the season goes on, and the Flyers have their meetings, and they'll have them with their scouts, every little while, routinely. They get the reports, then they get all the other stuff. They could start to say, "Hey, just like you said, 2 things we need: number 1 center, number 1 defenseman. Who are they?" Okay, then they find out who they are, and we know Higgins is one of them. Okay, can we get one of them based on all these picks we have? Well, you won't find that out until after the draft lottery. You have to wait until at least the draft lottery. When the draft lottery happens, then you know where your pick falls. Then you'll know where other picks fall for other teams. And that's where you could try and upgrade.
Right.
Now, sometimes this can go poorly. Like, again, the Boston Bruins thought, hey, we'll take all these first round picks and we'll move up and we'll get Noah Hannafin. It never happened. And they never expected to pick all those 3 in a row. I don't know that for sure. And it didn't work out great when all of a sudden they had to do that. We all remember. I was on Bruins TV. I remember. It's a moment in my life I'll probably never forget, right? So you don't want to be in that spot either. So that's where you kind of have to just watch these guys, but you don't know. The X factor here is knowing you have all these picks, you still don't know where you're going to fall in that draft lottery. That's a key part of this.
I think all of that is something to consider and take a look at as we get closer to next year's draft and as we see how the Flyers are doing in the standings, right? That'll be a big part of it as well. So we'll see, but these are good questions, and we will definitely circle back to the who of the
For sure.
potential
It's a great
draftees
question.
later in the season. That'll do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with the Flyers versus Sens preview and so much more. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. If you've got questions you want us to answer on the Wednesday mailbag segment, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockdownflyers@gmail.com or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on Blue Sky and Twitter, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey, become a fantasy hockey expert, and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts.